Welcome back to the VSL. I'm joined by Rodrigo, who just had a really intense match against Brian Kelly. So
Yeah, it was really intense.
that was really intense. There were libraries everywhere, both Alexandrian and Sylvan. We saw that's more Gear Hulks than I've ever cast in my life. Never cast Gear Hulk in my life, but you get the idea. Leopold arrived, drew a bunch of cards. What do you think that matchup came down to, Rodrigo?
Also, on the first game, I had Library, which is quite good in the matchup, but he got turn 1 Jace, turn 2 Darkfiden, or turn 3 Darkfiden. I had to answer this, so I got down in the Library, but got to kill them. And then he drew more cards. He was able to answer my Leovolds. And yeah, I got some lucky top decks. And game 2, it was just, I think that he drew more cards faster. Like he had Ancestral at the start, and then every 2 turns he gushed. Like he made his 2 land drops, he gushed and played a bomb. Then next 2 turns a game. And I was not able to follow it so good.
Now, I thought you played the match really well. I think that there were a bunch of really hard decisions from both players. I find Library is one of the most challenging cards in Magic, and it's completely broken. But the tough decision of when do you stay on Library, when do you essentially lose the ability to keep getting cards with Library to play out all those cards that you've been accumulating is, to me, one of the most interesting mirror match decisions in a blue mirror match in Vintage.
Yeah, it's quite difficult card to use properly, but because every turn you cold tap it, you have to take a lot of decisions. Like, I'm gonna keep tapping it or not.
Well, yes, I mean, that's generally what one does with the Library of Alexandria. But it's... Oh, well. Rodrigo has stepped away. I understand. Welcome back. So, to me, I think if I err with Library, I tend to be too unwilling to give up my Library, even as my opponent is, throwing down monsters, and even as barbarians are assembling at the gate.
Yeah, it depends on what he's doing, because, for example, cards like Jace draw faster and better than Library, like the Mind Sculptor and the Tiny Jace. If I don't answer it in a proper manner, the Ultimatum can get me.
That's true. That's very true. Jace is really strong because he's not just a card advantage engine, but he's also a threat. He'll win the game eventually.
Yeah, so I don't care about Darkfiden. Darkfiden just filters cards, and his Ultimatum is okay.
I care about Darkfiden. Sometimes he steals your Triskelion with all those arms.
Yeah, but you usually don't have Library there when he steals your Triskelion.
No. If I can ever combine Library of Alexandria and Mishra's Workshop, I'm going to have an incredible deck in my hands that I could easily O2 the VSL with.
It exists. A friend of me played it. The same guy that played this deck played a deck called Crucible Control.
Tell me more about this deck. It sounds awesome.
It's time years ago, but it played Neverial Disc, Crucible of Worlds, and mana drains and all this stuff.
Did you play Workshop?
Yeah, Workshop.
Wow, so Mana Drain and Workshop. I remember Travis the Plant played that sort of deck along with Monkey Cage.
I don't know. I know that the first guy who played this deck was a Canadian guy years ago, and he went to a tournament in Italy and he was on rollerblades, playing with rollerblades. Maybe you know him.
I know a lot of Canadians. I don't know any Canadians that have rollerblades.
Yeah, and the deck was pretty good. Just my friend sold his workshops, so
it sounds really cool, actually. All right, looks like we are ready for the match, so let's check it out. That intro was awesome. I don't know if you were around in the 80s, Rodrigo, but I was. And when we went to get our pictures taken, one of the options that we could get our pictures taken with on picture day in the 80s was with a bunch of lasers in the background. It's easy to appear futuristic when you're in the 1980s. And the introduction just reminded me of Laser Picture Day. My parents did not splurge for the lasers. I just had the regular non-laser sort of picture. But, you know, for those fancy kids that did have lasers, what a time it would have been.
Also here, the players have changed. Kelly is playing on top and Pikula is on the bottom. So even if they have cards that could be in either deck, so Kelly has a strong hand like Force of Will and Ancestral Recall, and Pikula has not so. Yeah, has just a lot of draw spells, but none of them are as good as Ancestral Recall.
That's true. You see that Chris Pikula has in his hand 4 different spells that are just sort of crummy variations of Ancestral Recall. Brian cleverly led with his non-wastable land, so their hands are actually very similar, right? They both have Gush, they both have Dig Through Time. It's just that instead of 2 random cantrips, Brian Kelly has a Force and an Ancestral. So Brian Kelly, I'd say, is ahead, but at the same time, Chris is going to see the Ancestral coming. He's going to be able to use his cantrips to try to mitigate that. So Mental Misstep is obviously something he'd love to find.
Here, so now you just want to get missteps. A mentor.
So do you take this? On the one hand, so the difficulty with taking Mentor here is that you won't get to enjoy him until next turn. You can take Mentor and then shuffle and then Preordain in the hope of finding a misstep. So I guess it's actually pretty strong. I think I like taking it. And yep. And now Chris is meddling away the top 2 cards of his library. He's going to continue on his quest for the Mental Misstep. The difficulty is that Brian Kelly can Force of Will the Mentor, and Chris doesn't have terribly much in the way of follow-up after that.
Oh, a Force of Will.
Oh, well, there you go. So note that Force of Will still won't let Chris win the counter war over Ancestral, but it will mean that his good buddy Monastery Mentor can show up.
So I think in response to the Mentor, you Ancestral and then see what happens.
I like.
Mental Misstep.
Wow, Chris Pikula just mised the misstep. So now Chris has a choice. He can play Mentor. He can also go Digging Through Time.
I will play Mentor, I think.
It looks like Chris agrees with you.
If he Ancestrals, you misstep, he forces. Now the choice is
Brian
both players with what they force, with Dig Through Time or with Dash.
So Brian's sort of priced into Ancestraling here because you don't want to have a counter battle after Monastery Mentor arrives. All right. So I think both players are going to cast Force. So is Brian Kelly going to be able to cast Dig Through Time? Wow, he did not fight over it. All right, that's respectable. Brian must be deciding that he'd rather fight over the Mentor, and Chris Pikula is not going to let that force of will happen.
Okay, and then he can dig next turn. They're both doing the same plays.
Yes.
The same hand.
At the end of this, they'll be in the same place, except Chris will have a Mentor and Brian Kelly not so much.
Yeah, but Brian Kelly's gonna resolve Dig Through Time first, so he could get like the one of swords he play.
He wants essentially swords and 0 mana answer to Dig Through Time that doesn't exist.
Yeah, but Brian doesn't know about the.
So I think Brian Kelly's play here should be to crack full priority and then Dig Through Time so that he can know what color of mana he needs.
He still has another fetch land, so.
But he's already played his land this turn. I'm saying that if you only he has both Red Blast main and Swords main. So yeah, if he only plays one,
he only plays 2 Tundra. So.
Oh, okay. So he already is priced into getting that. That makes sense.
So. Swords and Pyroblast.
Wow, man! If he had a Spirit Guide, he would be in very good shape. He could also take a Taxian Probe and feel really unhappy.
Redraw.
Wow, it looks like he took the Gataxian Probe, so it looks like he is on the feeling really unhappy plan. That's not going to work out so well for Brian Kelly's emotional state.
Now he swords, now Pikula digs back, and Kelly has only Mana Solstice in hand. That's not so great.
No, it's not. Sometimes you're playing Chris Pikula and you have nothing but a bunch of mana sources in hand, and let me tell you, it's the best feeling in the world.
That's mean.
I was referring to myself.
I noticed that your workshop deck only plays 17 lands.
Yes, by playing the Foundry Inspector, you get to have fewer mana in your deck.
Yeah, you still draw a lot of workshops and lands and Moxen.
I noticed.
Just in the mirror sense, so the 18 land, I think it's quite good.
It is. It is. Oh wow! Ancestral and Mental Mist, Ancestral and Mentor. Holy moly!
Ancestral is quite strong.
I can attest to that.
You have already played the land, so
I'm a little curious about Chris Pikula wastelanding Brian Kelly before anything, because Brian Kelly, I don't know. There's no reason to wasteland, at least until after you've resolved your spell.
No, but maybe he wastelands, and if Brian Kelly plays Gushing Response, he could dig there.
I guess that could work. Brian Kelly's too good at Magic to gush in response there.
Yeah.
So, well, here comes Monastery Mentor. I think here comes Monastery Mentor.
Yeah. Why he keeps the red up?
maybe
to
to block
fake a
the threats that he
Pyroblast.
doesn't have instead of being able to cast the swords that he has. But it doesn't matter because Vintage World Champion Brian Kelly draws his 5th mana source in a row. And wow.
Yeah, that was not an interesting match.
After the ridiculous match you guys had, that one was a little less exciting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see the rematch and see what he drew, because I drew pretty good. I just drew a lot of
really well. There were I was actually just stunned by how good your draws were. Brian also drew really well. I mean, that game, I feel like you both had draws that would have beaten an average or above average draw.
Yeah, I was also thinking of, when I drew the Ancestral, of not playing it, because with the Ancestral, his only kill option in the deck was Jace. So Ancestral and Fossil Will were 2 more cards in my deck when the Jace ultimates, and maybe I could Ancestral my opponent.
He was very low on cards at the end. He was at 3, right?
He was at 2 cards when the game ended, but he also played a preordain and drew 1 extra card with Sylvan Library.
Okay, so.
But if I Ancestral him, that's the best of the world. You have to counter an Ancestral on your opponent.
Seeing a VSL match end to Ancestral you would be pretty awesome. I've done it before against Dredge.
Yeah, against Dredge is quite not quite usual, but it happens sometimes.
So, wow, Brian Kelly has a turn 1 all-in Mentor.
With Foss.
And it will actually fail against Chris Pikula's hand, but wow. Actually, it won't fail because he has Misstep too. I don't know. Would you keep that? That's
I will keep it. But I'm not sure I would Mentor first. Yeah, maybe you have to go for it, but
I don't. This is a really tough one. You can also Lotus into Sylvan Library.
I think with this hand, it's easier that you lose the game that you win.
So you think you just ship it back?
No, but I think winning with this is like 45 to 55.
It does play around Chris Pikula's Wasteland incredibly well.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, so okay. Brian does ship it, and he gets, instead, a very powerful hand. He's scrying something that's metallic to the top.
That's a Mox, I think.
Something that should be brown, but isn't. Disappointing. So he's going to be able to have basic island into Ancestral, probably on Chris Pikula's upkeep. Or actually, no, he can just run it right out their main phase. So Chris is going to meddle this one, but Brian Kelly should have a turn to Dak. Ooh, but that Mox is actually going to change the tempo for Chris. Let's hope he doesn't play it this turn, because if he plays it this turn, it's just going to get mised by Dak Faden.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so Dak Faden's going to arrive.
You gush here after the Dak resolves?
No. You wait until next turn, and then you can enjoy a Jace.
Yeah, but the 2 cards you draw with Dak, you're gonna discard them.
Ah, that's okay. Wow. All right. I guess I was wrong. Oh, wow. Into Library, too.
I really think Library and Gush works really good.
Oh, they're best friends. They hang out together.
Yeah, you can. Every time I play Gush, it's like, yeah, I don't care about getting down on the Library. I'm just gonna Gush me up.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you don't have enough books for your library, and then the tide comes in and brings you a bunch of dead crabs, and somehow turn them into books through the magic power of transmutation, and now you have a library again. That's how science works. So here comes Monastery Mentor. Holy moly. All right, so Brian Kelly is going to be digging to find an answer to this fellow.
Or you DAC, then you ponder.
Yeah, DAC first because you could hit swords.
Poof. Brian is drawing lots of lands.
It's just like last game where Brian Kelly was drawing actual full-on nothing. So is there any card? So I guess Dismember. If he ponders into a Dismember, he can take out Mentor.
He does not play Dismember. Oh yes.
Oh, that's beside the point.
You made me check over the list.
I'm glad I can do something tonight. So there's Hornet Sting, but that unfortunately only deals 1 damage. If you combo Hornet Sting with... Oh man, speaking of stinging, this is going to be a pretty powerful turn for the Meddling Mage. He gets to Preordain and then Reb away Unsightly Dax.
Here. No.
Wow.
His own deck.
Yeah. So, would you rather have everyone have a deck or have no one have a deck? I guess if
I think having the Mentor, it's better to have you a deck.
Yeah, I guess if Dak arrives for Mr. Pikula, then Brian Kelly loses his Emerald, and that takes Brian Kelly off of playing Mentor next turn, which is pretty powerful.
So if Chris wins, then it's quite fun because the winner of the group is gonna be decided on tiebreakers.
If Chris wins, Chris will be 2-1, right?
Yes.
And let's see, Brian Kelly will also be 2-1.
Yeah.
And then I'm 0-2, and you're 1-1.
So if I win next round, it will be all 3 on tiebreakers. I don't know how this is solved.
I just know it'll be tremendously embarrassing for me.
Let's see. I hope at least we have a fun game. Whoever wins.
Games too.
At least today I have my both games were pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my deck, I think it's not a bad deck. I've done okay with it before, but today...
Yeah, you drew a lot of lands these 2 games against Chris.
It's possible that I should have mulliganed further, but they were both hands that were solid enough, provided that I drew things that weren't lands, but just Ancient Tombs.
Yeah, the problem is you never drew a sphere effect.
Yeah, I never did draw a sphere effect. Maybe I needed to have mulliganed more aggressively.
Yeah. It's always this, that if you don't mulligan, you don't get a sphere effect or something like that. The opponent's deck just play vintage against your creatures.
That's true. I mean, the shop's deck doesn't have cards like Ancestral Recall or Brainstorm to make up for bad draws, so you sort of have to use the mulligan to adjust things for yourself.
Yeah. And 3-2, it's not good enough usually. Yeah, but it's always this, like, yeah, maybe you draw into something.
Yeah.
Okay, seems like this game is almost over.
Well, Brian Kelly is probably not winning, so I was wondering why Chris Pikula chose not to play out his Tiny Jace last turn, but I guess the answer is that he was going to draw Force of Will. Which is actually possibly relevant here.
That's the worst, when your opponent is doing cool things and you just draw counter spells.
Why isn't Chris playing Jace?
He wants to have more counters back up, like Force of Will, Pyroblast, and...
I guess if he knew that he was drawing Force of Will, that makes sense.
Oh, that's a good card.
Gush is a solid Magic card.
I think Gush should be restricted.
I think so too. I think that all the problems in the format will solve themselves if you restrict this.
We spoke about this before the program started, and also Chris and Brian thought on that it should be restricted.
Yeah. I would absolutely love for Gush to get restricted. It'll free up the space for big blue decks like the one you're playing. It'll actually hurt Workshops a lot to restrict Gush because Workshops really preys on those fragile mana bases.
Yeah, and also Misstep is another card that I don't like a lot in Vintage. It does the same against Workshops. Just all this who has more Missteps wars is not fun.
I think I would start by restricting Gush and then seeing what happens. I think it would lead to a golden age of Control Slaver being good, make gifts great again. I think it would do a lot of really great things for the metagame.
Here you need to draw Ancestral, as at Lotus and Time Walk, right?
Unfortunately, well, he basically did that. He actually drew better than Ancestral. Why settle from the Ancestral?
He cannot draw into Lotus and Time Walk now.
I guess you're right. But this is still better than Ancestral.
Yeah.
So what can he draw into?
Into Misstep, Volcanic, and nothing.
What about Cave-In?
Cave-In?
Deals 2 damage and you discard a... Oh, wait, no, all of the monks are large. Cave-In won't quite do it. Wow. Chris Pikula, ladies and gentlemen, has just defeated Brian Kelly. That was pretty spectacular.
Yeah. The usual mentor comes, mentor wins.
So they're both 2-1 now, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I have to get one of those green thumbs. Those look pretty swell.
Yeah, I will try that you don't get it.
Well, you'll create an awkward 3-way tie situation. I hope you're prepared for those sort of ramifications.
Yeah, it will get solved somehow.
Yeah. Those are pretty exciting games. It seemed like Chris was able to stay one step ahead of Brian Kelly.
Yeah, so playing the mentor and then digging for business instead of answers for the mentor was quite powerful there. Like, he had just one more good card at the end.
Yeah. I mean, often these come down to whoever has the last good card wins.
Yeah, happens a lot in Vintage.
It does. That's why Vintage games get won by Phyrexian Revokers and Snapcaster Mages.
Yeah.
Both players are doing really powerful things, and in the end, it's just some sort of caveman with a club beating the other wizard to death.
So, now let's see.
We're going to cut to ads, and then it's Rodrigo and I, and we'll see what happens when Leovold takes on Founders.
Ballistas.
Well, or Ballistas.
Good luck.